This is StoryBeat, Storytellers on Storytelling, an exploration into how master storytellers and artists develop and build brilliant stories and works of art that people everywhere love and admire. So join us as we discover how talented creators of all kinds find success in the worlds of imagination and entertainment. Here now is your host, Steve Cuden.
Thanks for joining us on StoryBeat. We're coming to you from the Center for Media Innovation on the campus of Point Park University in the heart of downtown Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. If you like this podcast, please take a moment to give us a rating or review on whatever app or platform you're listening to. Your support helps us bring more great StoryBeat episodes to you. Well, we've got a good one today. My guest is George Newbern. He may be quite familiar to you because he's had a career in film and television spanning several decades. He's immensely versatile, ranging from his debut arc as Payne McIlroy in Designing Women to his current role as Charlie, the one-time B613 assassin who is now a member of what was formerly Olivia Pope and Associates and is now Quinn Perkins and Associates on the hit ABC show Scandal. After Designing Women, George went on to recur on the TV series Working Girl with Sandra Bullock. His TV career continued to grow as he joined famed TV series such as Chicago Hope, Friends, Bull, Providence, and Nip Tuck for regular and recurring roles. He's also made guest appearances on CSI, Criminal Minds, Private Practice, The Mentalist, Boston Legal, Grey's Anatomy, and Cold Case, to name just a few. In his feature film debut, George starred opposite Steve Martin and Diane Keaton in Father of the Bride and reprised his role in Father of the Bride 2. George's career also includes a multitude of voiceover roles, including Justice League, Theodore Rex, and Batman Gotham Knight. George has been the voice of Superman in various DC iterations of the iconic superhero, as well as on the animated series Static Shock and The Batman, including an episode that I wrote called The Batman-Superman Story. He's also done voiceover work for the video games Final Fantasy X2, Kingdom Hearts 2, and Final Fantasy VII, Advent Children. Well, it is a truly wonderful pleasure for me to have my longtime dear friend George Newbern on StoryBeat today. George, welcome.
Good to be here. That guy sounds amazing.
He
Who
does.
Is that guy?
I don't know. I need to get a hold of him.
What the what?
So
that is hilarious.
Yeah. Well, there you go. It's like your whole life has flashed before your ears.
I know. My God. I hope we don't trip on something. But
so
we've been doing this for a while, huh?
You have. So. What were your? I know you grew up in Little Rock, Arkansas, but what were your earliest inspirations and influences? What was your first creative love? How did you get into this thing?
You know, it's funny. I never really even. I guess we could start with the fact that, like many actors, I was a bit of I was a middle child, and I basically did anything I could do to get attention within my family, and I was not great at sports. And then added, my mother was another frequent recurrent actor theme. She was a heavy alcoholic, and I tended to just sort of want to go do my own thing and sort of find my own voice and figure out what I wanted to be. I also, growing up in Little Rock, I felt like I want to be different. I don't want to just be here. I want to do something. So I got involved in the children's theater, and it was basically the impetus was I was sort of a show off. I don't know what to say. I was a little bit of a show off as a little kid, and I wanted to do something in a more formal way. And then I didn't know if I was any good at it. I just wanted to, it looked fun.
Sure, and so that's where you and I essentially met, 400 years ago when we were both doing a show called Papa Bear, Mama Bear.
That's right.
And so I know you from way back when you were, well, you're a little younger than I am, but you were a child actor and a great singer at the same time.
Yeah, but I didn't, my first play was, I think it was called was Life with Father, which is an old play and a movie, and it was in the community theater, and my uncle was in these plays. And I guess that's sort of my influences. My uncle was doing these plays, and then went and did it, and my older brother was in the play with me too. We all had to dye our hair some terrible orange color, which I'm sure looked hideous. Imagine the Little Rock, Arkansas community theater production of Life with Father with really bad dyed red hair. So just imagine that.
At what age?
I was 11.
So dyed orange hair at 11. Perfect.
Yeah, it was just, well, I say dyed. It's, remember streaks and tips?
Sure.
Streaks and tips, you just spray your head and it looks terrible. It looks like a bad clown wig. But I had no idea what I was doing, you're just there, you're doing a play. It was just like, what is this? This is fun. I like people in the audience, but I don't know. I had no idea what I was doing.
Did you know early on that you enjoyed it, so that that's where you got the bug?
No, I enjoyed it. But I'll tell you, I did a children's theater production just before I met you with this guy named Rand Hopkins, and it was a musical, and we had a read through with the music, and I had learned the music out loud. I was now 13, and we sat in the studio and we sang our songs for each other for the first time, and I sang it out loud, and I was like, wow, I think I can sing. I had no idea. It was just a weird moment. I distinctly remember the day. I remember what time of day it was, where I was, what I was wearing. I was like, oh, I think I can do this. And it was an amazing sort of, some people are lucky to get that when they're a kid and go, wow, I'm either good at, X, Y, Z, whether it's I'm an architect or I'm really good with math or I'm great at sports or whatever. I was like, I think I can do this.
You had a vocal epiphany.
I had a vocal epiphany. There's no question about it. I really did. And I felt the feeling, it's one of those moments where writers lose themselves. As a kid, I remember sort of having an out-of-body experience going, wow, this is a great feeling. This feels like I'm flying a jet. It's this sort of cool feeling that you get when you're not thinking about it and you feel like you're doing what you're supposed to do.
My memory of you, George, back then is that you had an amazing voice for a 13-year-old.
Thank you.
And I know you really haven't made a career out of singing, but do you still sing?
No, I do sing some. That was my whole. I thought I was going to be a musical theater person. I went, I did a lot of musicals in high school, and then went to Northwestern and did mostly musicals at Northwestern, and did a play at the Goodman Theater with my wife, now wife, Marietta DePrima, and I just figured I'd go to New York, and then I started looking around at what New York was, and I was like, wow, I don't think I'm going to be able to afford an apartment, much less ever buy a house and have a family. So I kind of switched gears. Right, my junior year in college, I auditioned for this movie downtown Chicago that ended up being Back to the Future, and they flew me out to L.A., and I'll never forget that trip. And I screen tested with everybody from Back to the Future who was already cast, except the Marty McFly part. And I was so blown away. I was like, what is this world? This is not musical theater. And I sort of thought, well, maybe that's a sign from God that I should come out here instead of go to New York. So
sure.
That's what happened there. So.
Who are your acting
Incidentally,
heroes?
I did not get Back to the Future, just so you know. No. Get it.
And you know what? There's another guy that didn't get it either.
I know. Skip Lackey.
Skip Lackey went up for that too?
Skip Lackey tested for that part as well a week before.
Oh, wow.
This is for your listeners. They might not know this is a mutual friend of ours. But,
yes, Skip is a mutual friend.
But then Eric Stoltz got it, and then Eric Stoltz got fired, and then it was Michael Fox. So.
Yes.
Fun story.
Michael J. Fox. Who are your acting heroes? Who did you admire early on and say, I'd like to be like that person?
I've always loved Jimmy Stewart, Spencer Tracy, and those. I loved Bill Cosby as a kid. I thought there was nobody funnier than Bill Cosby. Not so much now.
Not so much now.
But and who else? I was obsessed with the Jackson 5 and the Osmonds. I'd get up every day and I would think about, they had a cartoon, they had dueling cartoons on at the time. I was obsessed with, television and pop music and all that stuff as a kid. So I wasn't even thinking about actors so much. As I was in college, I sort of just tried to figure out what the hell anything meant. And
well, that's hard at that age to figure out what anything actually means.
Yeah.
You didn't have enough experience under your belt to have a clue.
No, clearly. I still don't, frankly. Some days I do, some days I don't.
Was there some point, whether in high school or college, where or maybe not till today, I don't know, you'll tell us, where you finally realized, hey, I really am good at this. I don't just like it, and I'm not just a decent singer, but I'm good at this. I should be doing this.
Well, I had little different sort of affirmations as I went along. I got into Northwestern. It was a theater school there, which is very difficult. And my first week of school, I got the lead in the musical, Pippin. I played the title role of Pippin the first week of school. And that's sort of unheard of at school, at Northwestern, because it's a very sort of hierarchical sort of, you have to earn it to get a part.
Of course.
And I kind of freaked everybody out, freaked myself out. I didn't know what the hell, again, I didn't know what was going on. But and actually Laura Linney was on the crew.
No kidding.
that year. Yeah. And, so that was sort of the first big affirmation I had. And then as I, midway through Northwestern, I'd done a bunch of musicals, I did a play with this professor named Frank Galati.
Oh, yeah.
He's a pretty famous director. He's from Steppenwolf. He's part of Steppenwolf, but at the time he was head of the interp department at Northwestern.
Mm-hmm.
And he taught a class called Presentational Aesthetics. And it was basically, the coursework was, it wasn't theater. It wasn't like a literature course. It was basically interpretation of literature. And you would put literature up on its feet as if you were dramatizing it. Like, he said, she said. You would sort of stand there and you would do a dramatic reading, basically, of literature. And it was really interesting. And that's sort of the way Frank Galati directed all of his productions, like Grapes of Wrath, the Goodman production. I think it was on Broadway. I believe it was on Broadway. That production was done in the style that he taught, which is basically dramatic interpretation of literature on its feet. It's
interesting.
Sort of a reader's theater-y kind of way to do it. And my head exploded. We did a production of Huckleberry Finn with, I played 5 different characters. Everybody played 4 or 5 different characters, and done in this sort of literature style. But it was on stage with, all production values and everything. But it was very sort of accessible. You speak to the audience. And that experience, to me, I saw what a genius he was.
Mm-hmm.
And then I really saw for the first time the potential for great drama, when you're just reading something and it just jumps off the page at you, and any good writing can be made dramatic.
Absolutely.
Depending on how it's presented. And he was just a really, really smart director and person, and a generous person, and is still alive. I love him. I can't think of anybody. I could go off on Frank Galati for hours.
So he's also a playwright.
Everybody that knows him says this. If you look his name up, everybody, he is literally a guru. He's not a guru, but people look up to him.
Sure.
Like nobody else that I know of in theater, at least. Northwestern.
Correct me if I'm wrong. He's not just a director. He's also a playwright, and he's an interpreter of plays.
He's a playwright, and he's an actor. He's a great actor. I saw him do Scrooge at the Goodman. He played the title role of Scrooge, and he was a genius.
Huh.
He's won all sorts of Jeff Awards as an actor.
Wow.
I mean, he's truly a Renaissance guy. If anyone ever gets a chance to meet him or work with him or see his work, you must do it, because he's a treasure. He's an absolute. Are you
still in touch with him?
I haven't talked to him probably in 10 years. He was out here doing something, and we got together at a Northwestern alumni thing. But I think he lives in Florida now, and he actually, I think, it directs down in Florida at some small theater. But they drag him out for stuff whenever he will do it. But he is, I think he wrote the screenplay for Accidental Tourist, that movie.
Maybe.
But you have to look him up. Nobody knows who he is except everybody in theater and tons of folks in Hollywood
and
respect him.
And Chicago.
But anyway, so he was I would say my pivotal influence at Northwestern in a production where I felt like I'm so taken with this. I want to do this, and I think I can be good at it. Now, the making a living at it, that's a whole nother story.
Well, we'll talk about
played out.
We'll talk about that in a second for sure, because that's a big part of the process of being a working actor is how do you make a living at it? Otherwise, you got to go be a cab driver or a waiter or whatever.
Correct. Exactly.
So let's talk about the big kahuna for a second. You've been on Scandal now for how long? 5 or 6 years? 6 seasons?
Well, I've been on it from the very beginning, so 7 seasons.
7
I wasn't
seasons.
a regular until this last year. Although, frankly, I think I maybe should have been a regular about 2 or 3 years ago. I've done as many episodes as some of the regulars, but that's another game that gets played.
It's one of my guilty pleasures. I've seen every episode of Scandal. I love that show.
Oh my gosh! And I cannot. I'm so thank you for hanging in there.
It's great.
My goodness, it's fun. They break every rule and they keep doing it. People keep coming back. It's crazy. A lot of people can't follow it after a while.
It's followable. The show is it's a great American soap opera, but in prime time.
It gets exactly what it is. Exactly what it is.
And yet it's got all this action and drama and stuff in it beyond your average soap opera. So all right, so let's start at the beginning. When you went into audition for Scandal, was there anything special that you did, or I'm curious about your audition process as well? You probably don't do a ton of auditioning these days, but what did you?
I audition for anything. I've never stopped doing it, but
never. Good.
No, it's never. I don't think. I think everybody has to audition unless you're literally 5 people, like Brad Pitt, George Clooney.
Right. So what's your process?
But anyway,
what's your process? What do you do?
Well, the process is, you get the phone call and say, hey, you have a meeting tomorrow. Last minute, here's the material. Here's 10 pages, and do you want to go? And I always say yes, and then I go, but can I have another day? And they say, no, it's the last minute, and this is the way it goes. I'm like, damn it. So that's the first part of the process, and then the second part is I usually, and for the last 4 or 5 years now, I do this because I've found it really helps me. I record the other side of the material.
Mm-hmm.
I sort of time it out, and I record it on my phone, my iPhone, and the digital part. I record the other side of the conversation and leave enough space for myself. So I'm talking to myself.
Mm-hmm.
I can't ever find anybody else that's available to do it. So I'll record the scene and leave space for my response in there, and then I learn it. I learn it and I just listen to it a bunch of times. I put it in the car. I walk around with it with headphones on, and I'm just saying, and I'm listening to it and responding, because the act of listening to the other side of the conversation, that's where it all comes from. You're just really responding to what's going on.
Of course.
So many years I didn't do that. I would just sort of look at it and learn it. And the first time I was hearing it out loud was when I would go into the audition. It's so stupid. I did that for like decades, or like 15, 20 years. I was like, what am I doing? And the technology just sort of jumped out at me. I was like, oh, this is way easier to do it this way.
So the notion that you had not said it out loud before the actual audition.
No. Well, I'd said it out loud, but I'd not heard the other side of the thing, the audition out loud. So that's what changes the whole meeting. You're like, oh, wow, I'm really listening now. I mean, I was able to get by with it, but it's just not that,
Because correct me if I'm wrong, as I understand it, I certainly teach a class in it, but I'd love your perspective. The whole act of being an actor is 2 things. It's being in the moment and listening to what's going on and responding to that.
Correct. I mean, just like in real life, most people just think about themselves all day long. I mean, yes. They ask a question and really they're already thinking about what am I having for lunch, or God, that looks interesting, or how does that affect me? I mean, that's just the way people are. I get it. So if you think about that in an acting scene, most people are generally, it's dramatic, and yet everything the other person is saying, they're really only responding in the sense that how does it affect me? It sounds selfish, but it's just
it's human nature.
Realistic.
It's human nature.
So
yeah.
When someone's saying something to you, I try to really take it in, and I guess my first impulse would be how does it affect me, and where does that take me? Do I try to get away from that person? Do I want to get closer to that person? Am I trying to deflect them? Am I trying to get something from them? But it generally has to do with how is that affecting this character, because he's generally only kind of thinking about himself at that moment.
That's very valuable. That's valuable. Do you find that the people that you work with on a regular basis, obviously you've been working with folks on Scandal for some time, do you find that they have similar techniques, or are they all over the map?
I think it's all the map. I think it's completely all over the map. I don't think anybody has one certain way. And by the way, I think it always changes. I mean, my friend Harry Lennox did Titus. It's Titus Andronicus. What was the movie with Anthony Hopkins?
Titus.
Harry Lennox. It was called Titus. Okay.
And he's on the blacklist now, right?
Who?
Harry Lennox.
Why? Oh, shoot! I thought you meant in reality. Yes, he's on the television show The Blacklist. What?
Yeah.
What did he do?
Yes, the show, The Blacklist.
Yes, he's on that show, and he's a great actor and a great friend, an old friend of mine. But I remember he said when he worked with Anthony Hopkins that Anthony Hopkins would write. He would literally read the movie script. I'm not even kidding. At least 50 times.
Oh, that's the story on him.
He would read it, and then on the opposite page, opposite the script,
mm-hmm.
he would write notes and write his lines out and thoughts in teeny little writing, like just like voluminous writing about whatever was on the opposite page. Now, if he hears this and says I'm wrong, this is what Harry told me to. So
let's blame Harry.
But that's really interesting because what he does, he just basically he saturates himself so much in the material that he knows the script so, and not just his stuff, everybody's stuff. He's so immersed in the story that everything is second nature. All his choices, it sounds to me, come out of that he's so bathed in all of it intensely for so long that everything seems easy, but it's just because he did all that prep work.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not really. I don't think it's actory work. He comes from the British school. He's more for externally kind of attacks from the outside. So
right.
He's just literally looking at it and taking notes and writing I think he writes his lines out. He says it and then writes it out like it's a memorization thing. I think it just gets under his skin. So when he's on camera, man, he's been sitting with that stuff for a while. But
I would imagine that's a little harder to do on a working TV show.
Impossible. I was just about to say you can't do that. It's no time. That's a super luxury to be able to do that. So,
how many days do you get with the script before you're shooting? 1, 2, 5?
Oh my God, we'll have a table read on. Let's call it a Monday. We're shooting Tuesday.
Wow.
Sometimes we're actually shooting that day, but then they'll give us a scene ahead of time. It's like you're shooting after the afternoon after the table read, having not read the script. But that's more Shonda Rhimes' sort of process. She writes a ton of stuff, and her writers, and she'll get the script right before it's due, and then she'll change a lot of it so that everybody's. That's just the way it works. She sort of keeps her feet to the fire at the last minute and changes stuff, and it's fine. But it's just the production and the actors are just sort of like, oh no, when is the script coming? When is the script coming? So then you just sort of people learn to work that way. And,
well, that means that people like Kerry Washington and Joe Morton are really working hard because they get those big, chewy speeches.
Oh yeah, they get these long speeches. Oh yeah, oh heck yeah. That's and there's your short-term memory muscle gets pretty good at a certain point.
Mm-hmm.
Pretty good at learning last minute. You start seeing how they write, and you get in a rhythm, and you can kind of. The emergency aspect of it actually is kind of fun because you can't even think about it. You can't think about quote-unquote acting. You just learn all those words and spit it out fast. And a lot of times it actually comes off well because you're not thinking about it.
Right. Probably so. Just because you're not worrying it, you're just doing it.
Right, correct. And we get the note all the time from the writer's office. They'll say scandal pace, which means don't think, don't belabor into stuff. Just go.
I think that started. I think that started with Aaron Sorkin on The West Wing. That pace.
They could, sure. And then, if you could even go back to
Moonlighting.
God, there was a lot of
Moonlighting.
That was a lot of breathless, fast pace.
Oh yeah.
Take off from the early '40s movies. Who did that? Front page.
It was Glenn Gordon Caron.
Correct. But who was front page? Who wrote?
It was. Who wrote the front page?
You know what I'm talking about? That super fast-paced, snappy dialogue that was.
Now
I did the movie version of that play called Switching Channels. I can't think of the name.
That was with Burt Reynolds.
But,
and Kathleen Turner. I remember that movie.
Right. Kathleen Turner. Burt Reynolds. Christopher Reeve.
Christopher Reeve too. Yeah,
Christopher Reeve. Yeah, man.
Absolutely.
That's right.
So when they say that pace, in other words, that means you guys are lagging. They want you to pick it up.
Yeah, they just take all the air out of it, just completely overlap and overlap and don't think about it, and just go. And also, Shonda also writes. She will write. An hour-long script is really 40 minutes of finished product.
Yes.
But they write 70-page scripts, and so that means they overshoot. They cut out about 10 minutes, 12 minutes every episode, and that's a financial luxury because most shows don't get to do that.
No.
But she does that because she knows she wants that pace to be crazy, and they let her do it. And so so the director, the episodic director that week is a little bit sort of a little hamstrung in terms of the final product because he thinks he's shooting a 70-page script, and it's really a 55-page script that turns into 40 minutes. So that process is pretty interesting, and it's definitely it takes a lot of cooks, but then Shonda gets in at the last, and she's the final chef.
How often do you shoot something that winds up on the floor?
I've done probably 75 episodes so far. I would say probably 15 of those episodes I've been cut out of big chunks of them. Just not because of me, but just because of story and time.
Right.
So if there's something that is, and you can tell when you're doing it. By the way, the actors look at each other and go, "This is going to get cut," because if it's not advancing the A story or the B story, or mostly the A story, you're in danger of it getting cut if you don't speak really fast and make a bold choice. So even then, you're not safe.
So when I teach screenwriting, one of the principles that we teach is if anything in your story, your character, a scene, an act, a line of dialogue, if it does not advance the story or expand our understanding of character, it goes. And so so they're overwriting on purpose so they can take things out.
Correct. That's exactly right. Because sometimes they don't know. I guess the luxury is something that may seem not as important, they'll shoot it, and some behavior or some great moment comes out of it, and she has the luxury of being able, you know what? I like where this is going. I'm going to keep that little scene. It may not have anything to do with the A storyline, but down in a series, maybe this opens up a storyline for these other characters. You know what I mean? She's sort of like, I'm guessing here, but it seems like that she sort of gives herself ideas by overwriting and shooting it, and then going, that works or that doesn't work,
I imagine she's, from everything I've read about her, you'll know better than me, obviously. From everything I've read about her, she's unbelievable to be around and an unbelievable boss.
She's a great boss. She's a very shy person. She's not yakety yak person, but she's really, really, when she talks to you, it's really, everything is very edited and powerful. Like she doesn't. There's no idle chatter, And it's interesting when we sit at the table read. She sits in the front of the table with her laptop open, and I think she's probably just seen the final draft maybe an hour before.
Right.
She knows what the story is, but she hasn't seen the final draft, so she's actually listening to it, I think, for the first time clearly. And she's got her fingers on her laptop, and she's kind of looking out over the top of her laptop. She's not looking at anybody. She's literally just listening, and then her fingers are moving as we're talking. It's sort of otherworldly. She's not even present. Really, it's crazy.
I'm guessing she's
hearing
it.
And she's good at it. That's how she does. She knows. Okay, I'm going to hear it for the first time, and I know what's working and not going to work. So she's making edits right then, and then the writers really go back and do the next draft. And
I'm guessing she's really imagining virtually everything as it's going, and she's making those corrections on the fly. Yeah.
Right, she's listening and seeing it while her fingers are on the keyboards. It's weird. It's really impressive. So she's in touch with it, man.
So the group that you've been working with there for 7 years, I assume you're pretty tight at this point in terms of how you react to one another.
Everybody's good buddies. We had the best time.
And as actors, you probably know which way somebody's going to go before they go it.
What do you mean?
In other words, when you're on set and you know what the lines are going to be, at this point, they're probably nobody's really coming out of the blue and surprising you with something on set.
Yeah. That's true. That's true.
All right. Yeah. So tell us a little bit about the life of the set. When you're on set, obviously you're not working at every moment you're called on a day. What do you do in between? How do you keep yourself busy?
Well, usually, you're not. If you get the call sheet from the day before, if you're first up, if you're the first scene up, that means you're going to be first up before crew call and getting your makeup on, and you run in and get your clothes on and your makeup, and you have a little coffee, and then usually the crew is just starting to walk in while you. Burping now. I just had a huge cup of coffee and I burped on the national podcast or semi-national. Anyway,
we savor it, George. We savor every moment.
Yeah, just ladies and gentlemen, I'm burping. So then you go to the set and you stand with the director and you get you've learned your material and you just sort of you say it out loud a couple times and then the director, hopefully the director knows where you're going to enter and where you're going to exit. And the scene sort of blocks itself. The TV directing is just so different than rehearsing a play. It's just you get there, and the director kind of knows where he wants to end the scene. So he kind of, and he should, because it's just the smartest and fastest way to do it. Let the actors figure out organically, but then you sort of corral them in the right space. You rehearse it a couple times, and then you're pretty much done after 2 rehearsals. And that's about 5 minutes. And then they say, okay, call the crew in. The crew watches you, and then the assistant cameraman is marking your feet. And they, mark where your focal marks are going to be, where you stop and stand before you move to the next spot. And after about 15 minutes, you go back. They're done, and then they start lighting, and then you could probably shoot in 30 minutes.
So
or 45 minutes.
Do you stand around? Do you go off and do things? Do you write?
No, I usually go back to if it's you say how long do we have? I say we're looking at about 30 minutes, or whatever. So I go back to my trailer and I'll make sure if I know material, great. If I've got something later on in that day, I'll learn my stuff for then. Or I'll, return phone calls and I'll chill out, maybe take a little nap or something. But usually, if you're there all day and you've got a lot of material, that's when it's hard. If you've got, if you've got a bunch of scenes and a bunch of dialogue, it's a long, hard day because your adrenaline level is sort of at an 8 all day, just because you got to stay there. Even when you're waiting for the setups, because for me, the dialogue can just fly out of my head, and I'm like, oh my God. So I have to constantly be I'm running the lines all day, because I can't, because I want the freedom to be able to just have a moment, while you're shooting you're not just thinking about the line.
So I guess that really, you got down to the heart of what I was really hoping you'd tell us, is that it's not all, you're actually, if you've got a lot to do, you're on all day long, but you're not on camera all day long.
Correct. You have to keep for want of a better phrase, you kind of have to keep it up all day. You just got to keep it up all day, and
the context of that is very important, George.
And sometimes I go in and you do one scene and you're done. I'm done in 3 hours. I come home and that's an easy day. Generally, my stuff gets grouped on one day. A lot of my stuff is 1 or 2 or 3 days, and it's a lot of work.
What do you do on the in between days? How do you keep yourself in shape, and what do you do?
Well, what I do is I have a side business. I narrate audiobooks for 7 or 8 different publishers in New York and Michigan and Los Angeles. So when Scandal started, since I never knew if I was going to get killed every week, I was like, man, this is a great job, but I'm not a regular, and I don't know how long this is going to last, and I've got kids coming up in college. So I had to figure something out this is a broader discussion about, how to make a living and being an actor in Los Angeles.
Exactly.
How it's changing, and, how you make ends meet and all that stuff. I figured out a way to sort of keep working with my voiceover career and sort of segued into audiobooks. And so every day I'm not on set, I'm either recording something or I'm auditioning for something.
So you're busy all the time.
But I make myself busy every day. I monetize my day every day. That's Saturday and Sunday.
That's a very good philosophy. If you can figure that out.
You have to. I cannot. You got to move the needle every day. I feel like I need to move the needle today.
Well, you're your own business, and you have to treat it like a business.
Correct. No one gives a rat's ass if I succeed or not.
Except you.
My family's
and
depending
your
on
family.
me, so I'm going to do it. I got to do it. So I can't, and this is sort of freeing about the older I get and the more I do this. I used to wait by the phone. I used to have, just go, oh my God, I'm not getting auditions and blah, 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 what's happening and why didn't I get that job and da, da, da. And it's understandable, for a long time. But at a certain point, I've realized that none of that stuff is productive, first of all. And second of all, I can't control it. The only thing I control is, how you make yourself feel every day, and how can you be productive to move the needle and make some forward progress. And for me, I gotta make money. So whatever that means, I need to make money today, because LA is very expensive, as you well know.
Yes.
So, but from that, I mean, that's okay. That's just that's my what's the cracking of the creative whip for me. Knowing that I have to do that, I get creative, and that's stimulating. It's I wish I could sit around and go, I want to do a play. I want to write a play today. I want to do a. I don't. My brain doesn't work that way anymore, and it's actually a lot better because it's more practical, and I feel better.
Because you're doing real work. You're not worrying.
I'm doing
about
something. I can sit around and play guitar all day. I would love to sing and play guitar all day. That'd be amazing. But if I did that, I'd be on the street. I can't feed myself. So you're trying to find a balance between staying creative and making a living. That's what it's boiled down to for me.
So let's talk then about this other career aspect of yours. You do a lot of different voiceover work, not just reading books, but clearly we've already talked about you've done a lot of animation work. What would you say, if any, are the differences between acting on camera and acting just with your voice?
Well, just trying to think, sort of broadly speaking, with your voice, you really have to be able to sort of almost disengage your body from your hearing, and you need to be a little more dramatic vocally, I think, in a weird way. It's a
little more over the top.
All people are doing are listening to your voice.
You've got to be a little bit more over the top, a little bit more animated.
Maybe that's, I don't know if that's the word, over the top, but more sculpted, more energized, more color in your voice. It takes a minute to sort of go, wait a minute, that's flat, because I'll hear it back again and go, whoa. Especially in animation stuff, you have to kind of, unless you're going for a super real sort of, Adult Swim, they're just guys, BoJack Horseman, they're just sitting around talking, and they just happen to be animals.
Mm-hmm.
That's a very different style. But generally speaking, in commercials and voiceover stuff or video games, everything needs to have that extra cut, extra bite, extra bit of energy that makes something cut through orally, A-U-R-A-L-L-Y, that makes people's ears perk up and listen. But on camera, it's actually generally you want to do less of that.
Less is more on camera. More is more on.
A little more, yeah. Just being still, but having the thought, just be still, a little stiller. Unless it's a big wide shot, and you're across the street, and you want to make it big. But generally speaking, I think that it's a different attack.
Do you find at this point in your career that it's a relatively easy transition for you to go from one to the other, or do you have to work at it?
No, I'm not. I think I'm pretty comfortable with it. I kind of know what. So what's the word? Which engines to prime at the given time.
Mm-hmm.
I can kind of know what that is. But I don't know. It's I couldn't imagine starting out doing this right now, but having looked back on it, I'm actually quite content and pleased with how it's worked out.
I think
going forward, I have a job till March. I don't know. I have no idea what's happening after March, but I generally know that if I keep showing up, things will work out. So
I would say
my credo.
Of all the people I've worked with in whatever my career has been, I would say you're certainly among them.
And you've had a really cool career.
Thank you. I have had a pretty good career. I'm very pleased with the way things have worked out.
I mean, seriously, jack of all trades. Man.
Yes, I have done many different things. But you're among the more steady, regularly successful people that I know. I know lots of people that have had up and down careers, and you've had your ups and downs too. But you've had more steady, regular than a whole lot of people that I know. And so that's a testament to your dogged pursuit of it and to keep after it. I've no doubt.
Thank you. And also, it's been like there's definitely a certain amount of luck in there, man. There's no doubt about that.
Oh well, for sure. For sure. You're given the certain talents you have, and then how well you develop them, and then how lucky do you get to get in the right room with certain people.
Correct.
All those things.
And I think the extra factor here is just not get discouraged. I mean, that is the biggest thing. If you clearly suck at what you're doing, and nobody's asking you to do it, you shouldn't be doing it. But if you have a talent for it, and you've had some affirmation, and you're passionate about it, the key is to keep showing up and stay in it, because it does eventually come around. It just, you have to make those decisions about how much of your life you're willing to not forsake, but live with while you're staying, getting rejected every other day.
Right. So back to a little bit of the other stuff. You've done tons of comedies and dramas. You've done both. Do you have a preference? Do you have a preference?
I think maybe single camera half hour would be my preference. I do not like 3-camera sitcoms.
No.
I'm not comfortable in them unless the writing is amazing, like Friends.
Right.
That's the only time that it's fun, because you can really rest in the writing. And you're funny. The writing is funny, and you're going to be funny. But I would say 80 to 90% of the rest of the 3-camera sitcoms are not super well written, and they're waiting for the actors to come and fix it and fill it up.
Mm-hmm.
I'm terrible at that. It's not. There's something about it. The bullshit meter goes off in my brain. I'm like, man, that is not funny. And then consequently, I don't make it funny.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't love the 3 cameras unless it's great. But the single camera half hour, I feel super comfortable in. Like a Modern Family show, to me, would be my dream job. The hour dramas are great too, because you can spread out the love among 6 or 7 characters, and the work schedule is usually pretty good, and that. But I tend to not do well as an actor when I'm feeling like I'm being judged, like right in my face. And 3-camera sitcom stuff is, the pressure for that is just not healthy for me personally.
So in all your years, what would you say is the most challenging experience you've had on a set, and how did you recover from it, or how did you fix it?
Most challenging.
Where things just got all screwed up, or they weren't going your way. Did you have anything like that? I've
had some. I've had a couple of jobs I got fired from, which were oddly enough both sitcoms, and that's maybe why I feel that way about sitcoms. But I look at those experiences as life lessons, and I survived those, though not in them with the job. But those were the most stressful for me personally, just in show business, when I was like, doing something that I thought I was doing right or whatever, and then it just doesn't work out. People go, nope, they're replacing you. Or like, what? The ultimate, slam. But yeah. I realized if you do it long enough, you're gonna get fired from something. So that's especially when you've done so much of it. Right, exactly. You get a crowd of 3,000 people together, somebody's gonna have a heart attack.
Well,
so you better have the paddles nearby.
That's true. You've worked with some absolutely amazing and great actors and stars like Shirley MacLaine, Sidney Poitier,
yep.
Steve Martin, Diane Keaton, Sandra Bullock,
yep.
Burt Reynolds, and of course the cast you've been working with on Scandal for all these years is great too. What have you learned from those people, or any one of them, about being a professional and how to approach a career? What have you learned from them, or any one of them? There have been so many. I definitely tried to learn from everybody that I worked with, and I remember doing Terms of Endearment. I had a scene where I was supposed to cry or whatever. I was getting out of prison. I played Deborah Winger's son in that thing, and I had my first day on the set with Shirley MacLaine was I had to
walk out of the prison gates and sort of hug her for the first time. And, I was like, oh my God, I have to get emotional. Of course, every time you do that, you can't get emotional. The more you think about it, the more it retreats back into your body. And so I did it. I did it a couple times, and I think it kind of got it the first time, and then the second and third and fourth day, I was like, it just wasn't there. And Shirley MacLaine comes over and she goes, I need you to cry for me, for whatever the two shot that we did. The Dulcie. I was like, okay, got it. And she goes, why aren't you using this stuff? And I was like, what do you mean? What do you mean the stuff? She said, the menthol. I was like, oh, I thought that was cheating. She goes, oh my God, we all use this. Don't worry. So it's basically that the makeup person has some menthol in their bag, and they come and blow in your eyes to get you sort of agitated and get you in the mode to sort of, you can cry, you can get the tear, you can do whatever. My God, I was so relieved after that, because from then on, I was like, I know if I ever have a scene, I can always bring in the
menthol.
Everybody, and I watched Miranda Richardson do it. I watched Donald Moffat. Everybody uses it. Some people get it. If you do it once, you get a good take. It just comes natural. That's fine. But usually, you have to do the thing 10 times. Your coverage wider, tighter, sideways. The other person's so by the time, so you never know when your actual close up on your eye for the tears. So you just can't just use the artifice of it. It's all acting anyway. So.
Well, that
was pretty cool. I felt great. It was a great thing.
That's a neat trick that we just learned.
It's a trick.
It is a trick. It's another neat magic trick. But speaking of magic tricks,
here's the thing: it doesn't mean you're not feeling it. It doesn't mean you're not doing the work. It just means that.
Well, it's hard to cry on cue.
It can help you get there.
It's very challenging to cry on cue.
Correct. But I mean, you don't even need to have to cry, but sometimes it just gets you in a place. You get those ducks, they get irritated, and it gets you emotionally to a place that then you don't need it. Then you can do it later, and keep doing it. So it's like pinching yourself.
So
whatever.
Speaking of magic tricks, you have pulled off one of the great magic tricks in Hollywood. You've been married to your wonderful wife, Marietta, for what? Almost 30 years now, right?
27 years.
27 years. And she is also a wonderful working actress in TV and films.
She is.
And so, and you've also managed to raise 3 great kids in a town notorious for being hard on showbiz marriages. What advice can you give the world for how to make a Hollywood marriage work?
Man, I would say... make sure you marry somebody that you're friends with, and that you're very attracted to, but that you really are friends with, and you love them and you like them. And then, make sure that you both have the same ideas about how you want to raise your kids before you get married. That sounds basic, but it's really true. My wife and I both have a sort of similar faith background. We go to the Catholic Church, and our kids were raised went to the Catholic school. So as long as you've got something massive, some big common thing that's bigger than you and your marriage that you agree on, I think for us at least that's sort of what's kept us together. But at the same time, I'll say this is very difficult. Always, it's just difficult being married for that long with children. It's hard.
Well,
hard.
I've no doubt that you've had your moments, but you're still together, and there's in that town that's really hard to do. Brutal. It is brutal, and I give you both enormous credit for doing the right things all along the way.
Well, thank you.
Okay, so surely you've seen more than a few odd rehearsal preparations, actors doing some odd rehearsal things. Right. Can you relate, any story that's like an odd rehearsal preparation?
An odd rehearsal preparation.
Because I can tell you one that I saw that was really odd.
Yeah, tell me. I would love to hear it.
So, I'll give you 2 back to back. John Voight, when I was working with John Voight with John Cassavetes, he would have to come on stage in a state of inebriation. He was supposed to come on stage in the play drunk. And he was a sense memory actor. He was a method actor, and he would spend a lot of time preparing to He would actually get on the floor where your people were off stage and sort of get into sense memory, lying on the floor, surrounded by a dozen people who were just trying to move around, so that he could kind of prepare to get into sense memory of being drunk, and so it looked like it was an arduous, challenging process for him to go through when I would see it. And I'd say that takes a lot of energy and a lot of time to do it. So then I was doing a show I was doing 3 shows in repertory for Cassavetes. And so the second prep, which was kind of the reverse of what Jon Voight did, was the great Peter Falk. He would, if he had a matinee, the show would go up at 2:00. And Peter Falk would go out and play 18 holes of golf in the morning. And he would show up at the theater about 5 minutes of 2 in the afternoon. And everybody be panicked because we didn't have our star. And he's the only one. There were a lot of people in the show, but he was on stage for the full 3 hours without being off stage at all. And he'd show up at 5 minutes of 2, put on a tuxedo, tie a real bow tie, and go on stage and just do it. And so those 2 preps opposite each other always amused me, that one took all this elaborate, preparation, and the other just went out and winged it. And that's so to see it that diametrically opposed, I guess you'd call it, was always fascinating to me.
And doing a theater production, I think, is a little different than also when you're on a TV production. You're there, and everybody's sort of, you're preparing all the time. You're sort of making the meal as you're eating it, as opposed to theater. It's rehearse, and then you do it. And then, different actors may have their prep right before they go to get into it. But gosh, I have not seen, I think my biggest challenge on an ongoing TV show is that everyone's so comfortable around each other. You're talking about where'd you go, what's the latest restaurant, or so-and-so's husband or wife did this or that, and your kids, and you're talking, you're laughing or whatever, and you're in the middle of a scene, right? So, because you've got all this downtime in between takes. So sometimes we get involved in a story, I'll hear them go, okay, now we're rolling, and I'll go, shit, oh, yeah, I have to remember I've got like a 2-page thing. So sometimes you forget that because it's all so ongoing that you have to really ratchet down. And oddly enough, you get used to it, and you can actually do good work that way, but it's only after you're sort of comfortable in the part and the working situation.
So Scandal this year, your part as the fiance of Quinn Perkins, who's pregnant, and obviously there's a whole at the current time that we're recording this show, Quinn is missing, and we don't know if she's alive or dead. And you're going through a whole lot of emotional grief over it. And so do you have to do a lot of prep to get to that point, or do you just are you just able to go and do it?
Well, you know what? I sometimes I make it work for me which is I just got, if it's sort of an emotional thing, and if I just got this material and everyone is, it's funny, and I'll just get the material and I'm like, God, and I get angry that I can't prepare for this or whatever, and then I use that as my, like, I cannot believe I have to do this. This is I can't work this way. Who can do it? And then I just go, and then I let it settle into my body, and I'm totally able to do this thing. That's how I make the crazy TV part work for me.
So we're actually seeing you on camera.
Turn it on itself, and I get mad at it, and then that makes it work for me.
You've now revealed that we're actually watching you on camera, angry over the fact that you got the part late.
Correct. or that I don't, or that I'm having trouble learning, whatever it is. I try to use the actual process of being there, or like people are making noise, or like it's like, damn it, I use that as my impetus going forward as much as I can. So.
Well, George, we're winding down toward the end of the show, and I've been talking to my dear friend George Newbern, who's one of the stars of Scandal, and the last couple of questions I'm going to ask you here. You've obviously worked and met with tons of people in the entertainment industry. I'm just wondering, do you have a quirky, weird story about something that's happened to you throughout your whole career, or something that was funny or oddball?
Two things came to mind. The first was going back to the not that someone told me, but my first terrifying show business story was that play, Life with Father, the first play I ever did.
Yeah.
And I was on stage midway through the first act, and I knew that I didn't leave the stage at that point. I'm just a kid, and I'm like, I'm doing a play. This is fun. And I had to go to the bathroom so bad, so badly. And I looked across. My brother played my older brother in the play, and I looked at him with this look in my eyes, and I could see him look like, what's wrong? We do the dialogue, and I went, you know what? I got to go to the bathroom. And I just left the stage. I left the stage, ran upstairs, did my business, came down, and just walked onto the stage. And wherever they were, we just kind of looked at each other. We started saying some words, and I got back in. I figured out where we were. And it was just one of those moments I went, you know what? As a kid, I realized, you know what? I thought the world was going to end that I did that. And then I came back on and went, you know what? You got to go. You got to do what you got to do.
You got to go. You got to go.
You got to go. You got to go. And then I think working with Shirley Clay, she was a trip, sweet woman. But because sometimes she would say stuff to me that I didn't know how to respond. And I think one of the things she told me, we were on set, and I said, so I can't remember what we were talking about, but she said to me, she goes, you know, you're not all here. You're not really here. And I said, what do you mean, Shirley? She goes, you're only here because I'm making you be here. And I was like, what does that mean? And she basically told me that I don't exist. I only exist because in her mind I exist.
Wow.
Okay. All right then. That was as kooky a showbiz as I got.
You are a creation of quantum physics.
Correct. That's not really a showbiz story. That's just like a weird story.
Oh, well, no, that's a showbiz story. That's a great showbiz story.
She's an odd bird, that one.
But she's a great actress.
What a great actress.
I love her to death. Yeah. So lastly, do you have, a good piece of advice or a tip for those that are trying to make their way into this crazy business and that would help them with their success?
I get asked that a lot from like young kids and people who are starting out, and it's really it's as basic as get in a play. Get in any play, even if it's no one sees it, even if it's you and 5 other people that are doing it on a corner, to just figure out, A, if you like it, and B, if you're any good at it. Because if you jump right into trying to audition for a commercial or trying to get on a TV, blah, 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 that's so much noise. Because if you can get in a play, you'll find your legs, find where you're supposed to be,
mm-hmm.
and I think everything else can be deceptive. That's why kid actors, I just feel terrible for parents who let their kids do TV before they even know what they're doing or have done a play and understand it, because they get all this attention and they get in the world of it, and then suddenly they're 19 and they're not getting as much work, and they've sort of missed the whole college, all their high school. It's a nightmare. Then they know what to do. So I would say if you're starting out, make sure you start at the basic level of theater, or write for theater, write plays, write short plays, or write a short film or something. Get in the very basic part of the mechanical part of it to see if you're good and you like it.
I think that's very wise advice, because
Yep.
that's not. It's also a way to test things safely, securely, without being exposed to the world for being good or bad, whatever you might be.
Yep.
Or
there's
desirable.
Enough judgment. The judgment will come. Trust me. The judgment is out there and it'll come. But
no doubt.
Get in a semi-safe environment and figure out if you're any good and if you like it.
No question about it. Well, George, my friend, this has just been a lot of fun, and I'm so grateful to you for coming on the show. And I look forward to seeing how things work out for you and Quinn on Scandal this year.
Yeah, right. It's pretty nutty so far. Pretty nutty.
All right, please say hi to Marietta for me, and
I will.
It's great chatting with you. Thanks for coming on the show.
Okay, thanks, Steve.
Today's StoryBeat tip. It's quite possible that you have the talent to write a truly unforgettable screenplay. Talent, I believe, is innate and can be developed. Craft, on the other hand, is not innate and must be learned. Developing both talent and craft takes hard work. Success can be elusive and depends on many factors, some in your control, some not. So what is success? Can it be measured by how much of your creative work you sell? Is it all about how much money you make, how often the media interviews you, or how frequently you're asked for your autograph? Or do you measure it by what you think of your own work or how satisfied you are by your own results? Is success merely measured by your self-worth and nothing else? Or is it some combination of the above, all of the above, or another thing entirely? In the end, success is usually what you perceive it to be. Here's wishing you great success in all that you do. And so we've come to the end of today's Story Beat. If you like this podcast, please take a moment to give us a comment on whatever app or platform you're listening to. Your support helps us bring more great episodes to you. This podcast would not have been possible without the generous support of the Center for Media Innovation on the campus of Point Park University. Until next time, I'm Steve Cuden, and may all your stories be unforgettable.